737, Nashville's morning news on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Good morning to your friends. Happy Friday, along with Johnny B, Ken Weaver, Dan Mandis here. Want to get straight to our buddy Jonathan Fahey, former federal prosecutor, ICE director, and also Fox News commentator. And he's kind enough to spend some time with us this morning. Jonathan, is always great to have you on. Want to talk about Stormy Daniels and the hush money trial. Now, number one, she's sending out tweets. We're going to talk about that first because she's been on the stand the last couple of days. The first day, she was trying to be kind of, funny and rehearsed and get in some, sort of comedic zingers. Second day, and she was roundly criticized for that. On the second day, which was yesterday, she came off a little more serious. We're going to talk about all of that. But she sent out this tweet. Real men respond to testimony by being sworn in and taking the stand in court. Oh, wait, never mind. This goes back, Jonathan, to what we were talking about before, where you've got all of these people, whether it's Michael Cohen or Stormy Daniels, and they're taking swipes at the former president, and he's not allowed to respond. That has to be infuriating.
Yeah. It's amazing if you think about it that the only one that doesn't get to talk is Donald Trump, right? She gets to talk. Michael Cohen's talking. And I certainly hope Trump's defense team is going to use these tweets in his defense to show how biased she is. But it just shows what this, the last couple of days just shows what I would say a joke, but it really is just such a disgrace and an embarrassment to the judicial system. But it really shows you what, again, her motivation is to harm Donald Trump. The whole prosecution, the motivation is to harm his reputation and prevent him from being elected and keep him off the campaign trail. So in some respects, they've been quite successful. I don't think they've been very successful in proving a criminal case since, I read a lot about this stuff and watch a lot. Most people don't even know what this crime is that he's supposed to have been committed. So, it's been a big failure for the judicial system, but it still might be successful for what they're trying to do to Donald Trump. Well,
and the whole last couple of days really seems like this was meant to embarrass the former president, bringing up, a former porn star. And she doesn't even, there's no proof that this alleged affair it was just like a one-time thing from what I understand, supposedly. And so one of the things that the Trump attorneys are trying to do is get her to admit that she made this whole thing up for her own notoriety and her own financial gain. And it doesn't sound like that was successful. We didn't see the testimony, but from what you're reading, what do you think?
Yeah, I think I'm a little puzzled. And again, it's hard when you're not there and you just read what's going on, because I've been in trials and read about them, and everything's not always in sync. But yeah, I do think the main points they really should emphasize, and you want the jury to walk away from, is one, she has a vendetta against him, wants to personally harm him, wants him to go to jail, so she's as biased as a witness can be in the outcome of the case, which is always a bad thing. And then I think the other thing is she's told multiple stories, so that's fair to point out, but usually that's not that hard to overcome, to say, well, I initially lied because I was afraid or something like that. But I think the main thing is she's biased, and this doesn't matter that much because there's no dispute that the payments were made. So it's just whether or not they were made because the affair happened or the affair didn't happen, it doesn't really go to the heart of the matter. So I'm not sure how successful they are on one part of it, but I think they were certainly successful on she's biased in the outcome, and, she wants to harm Donald Trump, and this is personal for her, so she'll do whatever she can to harm him. That part, I think, came across very good. Also, the weirdness factor of I think yesterday some of the stuff that came out across was that she's into the occult and paranormal activity, and she's like an intermediary to speak to dead people, which is truly bizarre. This case could get any more bizarre. So, but it seems to me it still was not particularly overall harmful to Donald Trump on a legal matter. I think this case would be seen as a complete joke, taking out the names of who the parties are. This doesn't even seem like it's a real case. Yeah. But it's certainly an open question how effective they were on some of the other parts of the cross.
What are the questions that I would ask? Again, we're both reading the same stuff. is that on the first day, I think it seemed like even Judge Merchan was like, all right, enough. She got really graphic, for example, on day one. And she did try to come in with some rehearsed, liners, zingers, whatever you want to call them. And the judge actually said to her that you need to tone it down. In your opinion, when you've seen this kind of a thing in front of a jury, does that kind of behavior actually impact a juror's decision on whether or not this is a credible witness?
Yeah, I think so. If a witness has to be effectively reprimanded by the judge during the trial, the judge is essentially saying you're doing something wrong, you're acting inappropriately. And typically juries, at least when I've been in jury trials, they seem to have a tremendous amount of respect for the judge, which makes sense. They come in, there's maybe the only time they've been on a jury, so they really look to that judge for not just the explicit things he or she might say, but also anything implicitly, their body language and stuff like that. So I do think that is another shot at her credibility. And I think it just shows she's in there for her own personal, not just the bias against Trump, but just to elevate herself for the fame that she may be getting out of it. She might be able to, go on, tour, write another book, whatever it is. So she's up there trying to get attention, trying to be funny, I've done this for a long time, and I have to say, when you're trying to be funny in court, at least for me, it usually has fallen flat, and I think juries don't like that, because it's like, even though I know and this case is a total joke and not a serious case, this jury presumably is taking this seriously. So somebody to come in there, make light of it, make light of the proceedings, or trying to sort of get attention for themselves, I think is offensive to people that are taking off work or whatever else they have to do, dedicating all of their time to this.
Well, and this is a very serious thing, too, obviously, Jonathan. I mean, you've got clearly, to me, and both of you, we agree that, this is a political hit job. It is part of lawfare. And so for the jury, as you very adequately said, the jury wants to take this seriously, and they expect the witnesses to take it just as serious. And when you're up there trying to tell jokes, and clearly someone who probably enjoys being the center of attention, it just, to me, it mars the whole thing. And of course, this whole thing, as we both agree, is a joke anyway. Jonathan, I thought this was interesting, and it really tells you all you need to know about the unfairness of this trial. Because after all of these accusations were made, and after the tweet by Stormy Daniels, Trump's attorneys asked the judge if Donald Trump could have the gag order temporarily lifted so that he could respond to some of the things that Stormy Daniels is saying. And the judge said no. Do you think that really telegraphs to the American people and the jurors that this is unfair, to say the least?
Well, I think for the American people, certainly yes. And I still don't even understand the purpose of the gag order, other than if, like we talked about before, if he was somehow singling out somebody that just happened to work in the court or something like that, a clerk or something, that, okay, that makes sense. But anything else, it should be fair game. And I think it certainly, the American public see this. Unfortunately, the jury doesn't see this. They don't know that this judge is doing these things that, in my opinion, that are unfair to Donald Trump. These are things that are taken up outside of the presence of the jury, so they don't even know this. So Donald Trump every day has to, he watch what he says, but meanwhile, everyone else out there gets to say whatever they want about him, characterize it in the most, worst light for him, and he can't even respond. I mean, you see, these other, some of these networks with a lot of the angry Democrats going on there, they get a field day. They get to say whatever they want, and he has to be very careful. And I mean, on one hand, I respect the fact I think he doesn't, he's willing to make this fight, and if he has to go to jail, he says he would, but I don't think he should be put in that position. He should be able to respond. This is a presidential campaign, which is far more important than some nonsense, at very worst, some record-keeping trial where, like we talked about before, it's supposedly a fraud case, but the only thing that it doesn't have that a fraud case has is a victim, or if there is a victim in this whole case, it's Donald Trump. Again, if you watch this trial from the outside, you would say, my gosh, there's this man sitting here that's the victim of all of these evil schemes, and they're trying to take his money and try to get fame and fortune from the relationships with him, and he's just, he's being victimized, and that's really what's going on here. If you look at this thing, that he's a target for so many people with their own selfish, nefarious motivations, and to not let him talk about it is so awful. And I don't know if you saw yesterday, I think it was Hillary Clinton was on, I think it was MSNBC talking about this, basically saying he stole the election, probably the most graceless politician in history that can't get over her bitterness, probably one of the most privileged people that's ever lived in this country, has more grievances than you can imagine. But she's suggesting that keeping someone quiet about something would somehow be illegal or improper. Somebody should throw the question back to her about the Steele dossier, where her campaign paid for it and said it was a legal expense.
Yep,
or
I know.
Or was there anyone kept quiet about Bill Clinton? I wonder. But they don't even they won't even ask her these questions, and they're certainly relevant questions. But it just goes. This whole thing is unfair. I hope the jury can see this for what it is, and I hope they can be fair. And that's my big concern. Is any normal jury in America would laugh at this case, and it would be thrown out with an acquittal very quickly. But I'm just concerned with a New York jury that has to face, if you're on this jury, you face your community, and do they want to be the people that, acquitted Donald Trump? And I think that's the bigger concern, is he might get convicted anyway.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing about Stormy Daniels. She's being accused, and the lawyers are trying to make hay out of this as well, of trying to make money off of this alleged affair, notoriety and all that. That's a legit accusation, because she's come out with, items with her name on it, some branding. She went on some sort of a stripper tour or something like that. I mean, she really has already made a ton of money off of this. And obviously this is someone who needs and wants and desires, craves notoriety. And so this whole thing feeds right into that narcissism.
Yeah, exactly. And the fact that, if this was I don't say a legitimate witness, but a normal witness wouldn't want attention, right? They would testify, they would leave, they wouldn't immediately go to Twitter. Yeah, this is something that's reviving her career, so to speak, because, no one would have, thought, a 2006 porn star would still be relevant in 2024 absent something like this. So this keeps her career alive, presumably, or gives her a second life or whatever, opportunities to make money and get attention, like you said. And yeah, this whole thing really just stinks of high heaven. And the amazing thing about it is, I don't even think this trial has reached its low point, which is going to happen next week with Michael Cohen.
Cohen, that's right.
Yeah, the porn star followed up by the perjurer. It's amazing.
We've been talking about that. Give me your 60 seconds, because I'm late, but you're always worth it. Give me your 60-second preview on Michael Cohen.
Well, I think he will say basically what the government says he's going to say, that these payments were made to silence Stormy Daniels, and he'll probably say they weren't legal expenses and shouldn't have been made that way. The cross-examination is going to be, you've lied repeatedly. You're making money about this. And I think the best one of all, before all this happened, he was bitter at Donald Trump for not getting appointments, and he had secretly taped him. And a lawyer secretly taping your client is probably the lowest of the low. So I think he's going to come across, he will say what the government wants him to say, but the cross-examination will be brutal, and he will come across as somebody that is biased, lying, has lied before, and will do anything to harm Donald Trump.
All right, Jonathan Fahey, always great to have you on. Looking forward to speaking to you next week about all of this, and have a great weekend.